When I was a kid, people used to talk about the upcoming apocalypse as if it were an event you could mark on the calendar, prepare for it accordingly, and then get it over with. It took me 30 years to accept that the end of the world must have happened even before I was born. For decades now, humanity has lingered on this agonized rock in space, feeding on scraps, and dying of increasingly complex and painful illnesses. I'm talking about dried rivers, coastal cities underwater, forests that have been burning non-stop for years, 1 billion people dead, and 1,000 species extinct. When I think about it, I wonder how come nothing and no one has taken the merciful decision of taking us out of our misery once and for all. And yet every day I wake up ready to fight. And I remember just how vicious our survival instinct can be. The fortunate cities around the world that still maintain a sense of a decent society usually make it through with a despicable and unforgiving military regime that distributes food, resources, and safety with a cheap iron fist. It's too easy to get kicked out of there, extremely dangerous to sneak in, and nearly impossible to earn a place there. In the outskirts, where most people survive, anarchy reigns. If anyone still cared enough to keep track of such things, the crime rate would be at 100%. Not a single person alive these days can say they haven't committed a crime. Children learn to spot and steal cans of food before they learn how to talk. And more often than not, learn to kill each other instead of learning how to read. That's how I grew up, fighting tooth and nail to keep myself, my dad, and my older sister alive. Always dreaming of a better place. Always dreaming of a solution to this chaos. I am used to expecting cruelty from the world, but I never thought the worst fate imaginable would soon hit me. Tonight, like any other night, I say goodbye to my sister with a tight hug, and I make sure my father is asleep in his bedroom. Whenever we have to separate from each other, even if just for a few minutes, we're used to hoping we'll see each other again, but prepared for it to be the last time we ever see one another. I sneak out of the discreet basement of the abandoned house where we live to avoid thieves, and I become another shadow in the night. This is part of my routine. We can work our asses off during the day, but nothing will ever make a difference like the trash I managed to steal from the city. I've been doing this since I was a kid. My body fills with adrenaline automatically. My eyes adjust to the sounds of the night, and I cover my mouth and nose with a handkerchief to help me with the contaminated air that pollutes the entire planet. My feet hit the pavement almost soundlessly. I press my back to the graffitied walls of old buildings, and I'm well aware I'm not alone out here. There are hundreds of other pathetic souls like me, scurrying around in the dark looking for food. We don't trust each other, but we have no option but to accept the unspoken rules of this system. I'm getting nearer to the city, and when I glance at the corners, there's always someone there, making a sign with their hands, warning others to move forward, to wait, or to run back home as fast as humanly possible. There's a patrolling tank moving at all hours along the last street before the border of the city, but it's easy enough to avoid at this point. The city itself is surrounded by a messy chain-link fence with spiked wires thrown haphazardly on it, but it's been quite damaged at this point. I have perfectly memorized every spot where there's a guard, a hole in the fence, or a way to sneak into an abandoned building or into the trash containers. There are kind souls inside who will drop perfectly good cans of food, clothes, medicine, all sorts of tools and things that the rest of us are always in need of. Just as well, there are vile creatures from the city that thrive on taking advantage of people like me. I'm no stranger to any of them. The plan is simple. I have to climb over a pile of trash, grip the ledge of a window above the fence, and hoist myself up while avoiding the spiked wire. I've done this 100 times before. Inside, there's a group of disgusting and unreliable men that nonetheless are the only option available to negotiate whatever I have in exchange for goods for my family. I'm almost there. My hands grip the ledge tightly, and I take a deep breath in anticipation. Then, 2 pairs of hands grab me from behind. I try to pull away and up into the ledge, but I scratch myself with the wire and the hands tug at me. They're on my shoulders, my legs, gripping my t-shirt and yanking me backward until I land hard on my back on the ground. I haven't recovered my breathing before they take my feet and start dragging me away. The night is too dark to see a thing, and yet I perfectly know who they are and what exactly is going on. A few minutes later, with my back all scratched and bleeding, the men drag me into a familiar building, much like the ones I had been trying to sneak into. It's a different and completely identical group of sketchy negotiators, except for the fact that I owe a great deal of money or resources to these ones. They had been expecting me, and they had found me. It's my worst nightmare, and it's not even the first time this happens. I try not to feel too scared and hope that, like the first time, they won't just kill me. There are about a dozen of them, and they kick and push me around. They pull me to my feet and then push me against a table, restraining me and pulling my right arm along the table. Fuck. I think I know what's about to happen. "You don't look like someone who's here to pay his debt," one of the men says. I recognize his voice as the boss around here. I can watch him from the corner of my eye as he approaches the table. I make one last feeble attempt to free myself from the countless pairs of hands that have me pinned to the table and stretch my arm on top of it. Despite my best interests, I smiled. Even if I had the money to pay, I wouldn't have wasted it on this. Obviously, this was a wrong move on my part. A second later, I scream and flinch with all my strength when a knife hits the table right next to my hand. He managed to startle me, and the smile he gives me now is crueler than anything I could ever attempt. "Why are you pissing your pants, traitorous coward? This isn't your first rodeo," the boss tells me. It's true. There, on the table, there's an obscenely sharp knife. And next to it, there's my right hand with the 3 fingers I have left. Yes, I suppose I have some experience here. I know I can't put up a fight. And yet I'm surprised when the boss hesitates before chopping off my middle finger. "Now, hold on a minute. What do we have here?" he mumbles to himself, and every other body in the room tenses in anticipation. He addresses me again with even more disgust than he usually shows during these rituals. "You're going to do this to me? You're going to rob me of the joy of slaughtering you? And you're not even going to warn me that you're a time bomb?" "What do you mean?" I ask weakly, completely dumbfounded by this turn of events. "You are sick," the boss says slowly. The second he says the words, all the hands on my body let go, and I'm so shocked that I fall to my knees with one arm still pathetically strewn on the table. "You are sick! You are sick! You are fucking sick!" the boss repeats as he paces the space across the table from me. "You didn't notice it? Look at your fucking fingers, or what's left of them. The blackened stump, the dried rotten tips, the black veins over your knuckles, the dirty nail beds. Unless you have recently clawed your way out of a grave, then you are in real trouble here, kid. For all practical purposes. I might as well be dead already. The dozen men in that room instantly stopped paying any attention to me other than to step back and nervously wipe their hands on their trousers when they remember touching me. I'm too stunned to focus on them either, but I catch random strings of words and fragments of sentences flying past me. No cure. Contagious. An exaggeration. Different disease. Blame the earth. And he died. I don't need to hear anything else. I scramble to my feet like a wounded creature, and I run toward the door at the other end of the room before someone changes their mind and decides to kill me. But just when I crash against the door and put my hand on the doorknob, one voice, louder and more intimidating than the rest, stops me. Hey, kid. It's the boss again. The man that cut 2 of my fingers off but has refused to kill me even after I grew up stealing money from him. Try going to the Operation Blackland. Go to the gates of the city. Say you're sick and show them your dirty hands. Don't even think about saying I sent you. This secret doesn't leave this room, okay? Remember, Operation Blackland. That's the last thing I hear before running away from there as fast as my feet can carry me. I don't return home. I run carelessly and desperately for a long time. Some people call out after me, to warn me or with intentions to attack me, but I don't stop, and eventually I outrun them all. I have no idea where to go, but I know I can't go back home. Telling my family the truth would only hurt them more than a sudden disappearance. A clean cut like the finger that I now wish I had lost instead of receiving this news. When my legs give out and I crash on the ground behind an abandoned building, I take the time to think about the meaning of my sickness. I know exactly what I have, because it's one of the most pervasive illnesses out of a horrifying wave of numerous, diverse and lethal diseases. These are the results of the aggressive contamination of our planet. If you breathe air at the wrong time, poisoned lungs will have you coughing up grey bile for days until you die. If you drink too much of the wrong water, you'll slowly dry up from the inside out for weeks until your bones will break through your skin. If you come in contact with the wrong kind of soil, like I apparently did, your body will consume, reproduce, and pretty much become dirt until you're a monstrous piece of coal in barely human shape. Everything we need to live is contaminated. Everything we consume is poisoned. Most of us are sick, and there's no hope of salvation. But there is Operation Blackland. After an hour or so of restless sleep, I drag myself to my feet and start a slow journey back toward the city. This time I will be going for the official gates of entry. I don't know anything about Operation Blackland other than it feels vaguely familiar, due to a handful of whispers I've caught here and there for weeks. The only thing I'm certain of is that my disease scares the most heinous criminals of the city, and that one of them offered me this secret as a last resort, and a display of kindness that this world hasn't seen in decades. I reach the gates of the city around noon. From 100 yards away, I know that there are soldiers aiming their guns at me. The road to the city is a desolate, dirty battleground. There are dead bodies and trash piling on both sides of the muddy road. I'm completely alone, and I raise both of my hands as a sign of surrender. This works in my favor because someone must notice the black tint of my hands from a distance, and they accurately guess what I'm there for. Even before I reach the gates, I'm able to see some commotion beyond the chain-link fence. To my great surprise, The gates open before I even get there, and I'm not received exclusively by soldiers. There's a pair of armed men, but they're following a woman wearing a lab coat and jogging toward me.
Finally, we were waiting for you.
The woman exclaims loud enough for me to hear. It's so strange to see a person out of my family look happy to see me that I stop in my tracks and mumble, Me? She laughs as if she expected that reaction, as if I was reading from a script she personally wrote.
All right. That's a mild exaggeration on my part. I apologize. We were waiting for someone like you. We are always expecting new guests, and it's a tremendous joy to welcome you.
I'm frozen in place. I wait for the moment when I wake up from this dream, but it doesn't come. This doesn't make sense. I know people in the city have it slightly easier than the rest of us, but I swear I had never seen someone look so cheerful, so stupidly, annoyingly, frighteningly fucking cheerful. What do you mean? That's the only thing I think to ask. She doesn't answer right away, though. Instead, she says,
Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Dr. Catherine Roy. I am one of many lucky individuals collaborating together for Operation Blackland. We are leaders in the process of finding a cure for all the unfortunate infections that are threatening humanity. You can trust us.
Dr. Catherine maintains a huge smile as she offers me a hand. I'm honestly not sure if I find her smile to be unsettling because it genuinely is, or because I'm so unused to seeing someone that looks happy to be alive. Either way, I reach out and take her hand. I know she noticed I'm sick, but she's not wearing any sort of gloves. The touch of her bare hand, the reassurance that I'm still human, that I'm not a lost cause, that I won't kill anyone I touch. It nearly brings me to tears. Of course, then she hastily pulls at my hand to bring me closer and study my blackened fingertips.
You're lucky.
This strange woman tells me, and I have to make an effort not to laugh or punch her at the irony of her words.
The infection isn't too widespread yet. You're perfect. We'll get you well in no time. Trust me.
The journey toward the Operation Blackland's headquarters in the city is strange and overwhelming. So many different things are pulling at my attention, and I'm struggling to focus even on my own footsteps. Dr. Catherine doesn't stop talking for a second, and I suspect she's either trying to comfort me or keep me from asking her any questions. The people walking the streets glance uninterestedly at us. Some look healthier and cleaner than the people from beyond the fence, but the differences aren't too big, except for the fact that they seem to walk mostly without fear of being robbed or attacked at all times, because there are soldiers on nearly every corner of the city. I notice that the ones escorting me and the doctor aren't part of them. They have to be private guards paid by Operation Blackland. Speaking of which, we finally reach our destination. It's a tall, nondescript building that, to be fair, looks more like a small prison or an abandoned grey hotel.
This isn't actually the center of the operation.
The doctor tells me as she guides me inside the rundown building.
This is where we stay while recruiting, while accepting new patients from the city. It's safe and doesn't attract unwanted attention.
The doctor and the two guards lead me upstairs and along a hallway with doors on each side. I can hear people like sick people, crying, coughing, and throwing up behind each door. It makes me shiver. I'm equal parts terrified to end up like them, and hopeful that there's salvation for all of us. When we stop in front of a door, one of the guards unlocks it while the doctor tells me,
We'll bring you dinner later tonight, and we'll leave for the Blacklands tomorrow around noon. We're so happy to have you join us. Your trust and health are in good hands.
Slowly, I enter the room and consider my options. I see a clean bed. I hear the promise of a warm meal. I remember the guards protecting the front door. This is the equivalent of a palace. My family, I blurt out and turn around to see the guards in the process of closing the door again. Can I bring them with me?
I'm sorry.
The doctor winces with a little exaggerated apologetic frown.
Operation Blackland is still in its early stages, and we'd prefer to keep it a tight secret. Only emergency cases are allowed to come to us. But trust me, you'll be back with your family in no time.
The door closes just when I realize that these people didn't even ask for my name. Even though to survive in this world, you have to be able to endure loneliness, work and survive on your own, and trust nobody. This is very new to me. A whole bedroom with a reliable door, guards protecting me from intruders, and a bed to myself. The luxury of safety nearly makes me cry, but the ache of missing my family really puts tears in my eyes. My instinct is to sleep on the floor, save the bed for my sister or father, and I thought about eating as little as possible to leave enough food for them. But there are two problems. One, they're not coming here. Two, my dinner didn't even arrive. It was the strangest thing. I had the impression that this place worked seamlessly, and I have trouble believing that they would forget one of their patients. After being welcomed so enthusiastically and being promised salvation from certain death, I hate to be difficult and make demands, but maybe if I just take a little peek into the hallway, someone will remember that I'm here and bring me my food. I plan a little apology in my mind and head for the door, which I find locked. I make a few attempts and knock on it several times, hoping someone will hear, come quickly to open it and apologize for locking me in my room, but there's nothing. I have to fight the anxiety sparking in my chest, and they surely have good reasons to keep a lock on their guests' doors. I figure that I would have worried more about it if I hadn't fallen under the spell of a comfortable, warm bed and a lifetime of exhaustion. My door slams open in the middle of the night. I wake up so startled I fall out of my bed. I look around for my father and sister, but I'm painfully reminded they aren't with me. Funny how I fought all my life to keep them alive, and even though they still live, they so quickly became ghosts to me. There's a guard at the door, and Dr. Catherine just briefly passes by, not really seeing me when she pokes her head in the room and says,
Come on, let's go. We're leaving a little early. Let's go. Hurry up, please.
She's being so polite for someone leading what seems to be an emergency exit from a fortress under siege. I stumble into the hallway along with dozens of other patients coming from every door from at least 3 floors of this dark and depressing building. The guards and the other doctors don't take us to the front doors, but to the basement, which we cross in nearly complete darkness. We come out into a street behind the building, and that's when I confirm that this isn't the promised departure at noon. The sky is pitch black, the breeze is freezing cold, and all of us are ushered into a handful of military-style trucks that had been waiting for us. I consider asking for an explanation for this suspicious evacuation, but the doctors all look so scared, and the guards not only look unapproachable, but they started to push and kick anyone that stayed behind, crumbled to the ground, and struggled to jump into the back of the trucks. Either way, I doubt anyone would have told me the full truth. The journey from the city toward the headquarters of Operation Blackland goes as well as expected, considering I was traveling on the back of a truck full of terminally ill people. Well, hopefully not terminal. We're all here in hopes that this project can cure us. All our sicknesses are increasingly common in the world, but they're all missing a cure. We leave the city under the cover of darkness, though I don't want to think of why this felt like we were escaping or hiding. When the sun starts to rise, I get a chance to take a good look at the people around me. Since we're going to be cured soon, or since we're already all sick, there are few precautions against contamination. The woman sitting next to me must be around my age, and I can tell we share the same symptoms, but hers are more extensive. Her hands are almost entirely the color of soil. And when she rubs them together, I can see bits of dirt falling to the floor. To my other side, there's an older man, though it takes me a while to think that maybe he's not so old. But the sickness that's drying him up from the inside out is responsible for his pale and wrinkled skin sticking to his bones. He sleeps during most of the journey. There's one teenage boy that looks perfectly healthy to me. Until, after a couple of hours of holding back, he finally can't stop his coughing fit that leaves him shivering on the floor of the truck, with smoke-grey saliva dripping from his mouth. This all makes me believe that a few more hours on that damned truck could probably kill all of us. We reach our destination just in time. For the first time since I heard about Operation Blackland, I am pleasantly surprised. I'm not rendered silent and frozen out of weakness or unease. This time I smile, and I'm filled with hope, and I nearly start clapping. The main building is exactly what I imagined. This is how the place for human salvation should look. It looks recently constructed and freshly cleaned. It's all shiny metal and crystal clear glass. There's even a garden out front. A fucking garden! I've never seen anything like it. It's just a couple of feet wide. It's covered by at least 3 protective layers, including an electric fence. There's a loud motor to the side of it, and I assume it's meant to keep an ideal atmosphere inside the garden, unlike the air we breathe on the rest of the planet. Then we all get down from the trucks, squinting our eyes against the unforgiving midday sun. I go along with everyone else to gawk at the garden. Fresh grass, different coloured flowers, even a whole tree. It's something you'd only see in books nowadays. It looks angelic, and not plastic at all. When someone talks over our stunned silence, we look up as if we've been woken from a dream.
This is just the first of many more gardens we hope to bring to our aching planet.
Dr. Catherine says, standing in front of our group and raising her voice with unexpected authority.
Look at those flowers blooming, thriving. With a little help from Operation Blackland, that could be you, living your life in the best and healthiest way possible. Let's go then. Let me give you a quick tour.
At first, the inside of the building is as impressive as its exterior. The floors are shining. The marble tops of the front desks are impeccable. And everywhere we look, there's a man or woman wearing a pristine lab coat and rushing from one place to another with a confident smile on their face. I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling completely out of place with my dirty clothes and an empty stomach. It feels very much like stepping onto an alien planet. But I'm about to discover that the surface of this planet is very different from the dark craters and tunnels hiding just underneath. The people of Operation Blackland guide our group through some double doors on one side of the bright and beautiful reception, and I feel immediately disoriented. Everything outside had been so intensely illuminated by the midday sun that when we are plunged into darkness again, for a couple of seconds, I feel blind. When my eyes finally adjust, I realize with a shock that Operation Blackland isn't a hospital. It's a factory. Something close to that, at least. There's one long hallway all along the 4 walls of this immense building, and all the walls are covered in closed doors, with stairs leading to more hallways up and down. But they leave a big empty space in the center, and when we're drawn toward the rail at the edge of the hallway, we look down and see that, underground, there are dozens of workers moving heavy machinery and driving construction vehicles from one gate to another. None of it makes sense to me. I don't know what those metallic parts are. I've never seen those loud tools that send sparks flying at the bottom of this building. Most importantly, I have no idea what any of that has to do with the rest of us.
You will have to excuse us for some of the mess.
Dr. Catherine says as if this was a silly, unimportant recreational tour.
We are in the middle of some renovations.
Renovations? I ask her. It looks like you haven't finished building this place up. The deep silence that follows my words makes me gulp nervously. It feels as if even the heavy machinery downstairs stopped working. My loud mouth is about to get me into serious trouble again, unless I learn my lesson. Eventually, the doctor answers me, but her voice is so icy that I have no doubt I've crossed a line. I just hope there's a chance of redemption for me.
We are in the middle of some renovations.
She repeats her words coldly. And without any more interruptions or warm instructions, she leads us forward. We are lucky to hear the good news that our rooms are located somewhere around the top floor of the building, as far as possible from the raucous noise of construction work happening near the bottom. However, we obviously have to walk through most of the facility to get there. This means one too many opportunities for me or someone else to mess up again. We learn quickly that questions aren't very welcomed at Operation Blackland. Every attempt any one of us makes at inquiring about something here goes more or less the same way. What are they building downstairs?
It's part of our operation. Don't worry about it.
How long does the treatment last?
As long as necessary, of course. Now let's keep walking.
When can we contact our family?
Please, let's leave non-urgent questions for later on.
Even something as innocuous as, "Excuse me, where's the bathroom?"
Of course, we have bathrooms, silly. Let's keep moving.
It's never a real, satisfactory, honest answer. Though, I have to say, I almost admire Dr. Catherine for successfully scaring a group of 20-something scarred apocalypse survivors with a saccharine smile. The worst thing we can do, it seems, is to try to see more than we're supposed to. At one point, the youngest guy in the group leans over the rail of the hallway to look down at the workers below, and the doctor calmly says,
Operation Blackland doesn't make itself responsible for people losing their balance and falling to their own deaths. It would be such a shame, wouldn't it?
When we're around the halfway mark to our quarters, a woman from the group lingers on the side, trying to catch a peek into a room through the tiny window at the center of one of the doors. Dr. Catherine takes such a sharp breath that it feels as if she's stealing air from our own lungs.
I suggest sticking to the rules to avoid losing your place in Operation Blackland,
she says.
We can find more guests. You won't find another cure.
The group is deadly silent afterwards. The message is quite clear. The operation promises us a cure and a second chance at life, but the rules are to be strictly followed, and defiance won't be tolerated. I feel my hands itching to just upset the extreme order of this place a little bit. If I had never broken any rules, then me and my family would have starved to death years ago. Insubordination is natural, inevitable, and too often a good thing. I lost 2 fingers of my hand trying to prove it. And yet, when the doctor stops us again, just before we are meant to climb the stairs that would lead us to our rooms, it's because of something completely accidental on my part. It just so happens that in order to avoid getting called out like my fellow patient, I move from the rail toward the wall. Unfortunately, this means I'm close to the doors, and even though I emphatically averted my eyes from any windows, nothing could have stopped me from that. That awful smell. Part of me saw it coming. All the other patients flinched a little when they walked past. Even Dr. Catherine and some of the other workers leading our group seemed to turn their faces away ahead of time. But I was the one walking closest to the wall. I pretty much brushed the door with my shoulder. How could I have guessed that one casual breath in the close vicinity of that one door would be the most putrid, the most revolting smell imaginable? All things considered, I think my reaction is just reasonable. "What the fuck is that?" I yell at the top of my lungs, and I stumble backward while gagging and trying not to vomit in the hallway. A friendly hand sits on my back to stop me from completely falling backward, but I'm too dazed and disgusted to notice who's there. I just keep screaming, "What the fuck? What the fuck? What do you keep in there?" The group instinctively steps away from me. There are nervous whispers. Other people focus on the smell and start to gag too, and they're asking questions as well. And yet I think the great shock is Catherine's voice breaking into the chaos.
"Silence.
She says at the top of her lungs.
No more broken rules will be tolerated."
She says so loudly that her and her cheerful smile have turned into a grimace that I'm afraid will start bleeding if she keeps it up much longer.
"You have two options. You can leave right now and die within days, or you can stay here, shut the hell up, and be cured. Understood?"
She doesn't wait for an answer, and most of the group of terminally ill people scramble to follow her up one more flight of stairs, even though the small tour of this building has clearly taken a toll on their weak bodies. Some people stagger behind, some walk slowly, talking among themselves, discussing the option, even though they know very well that Catherine isn't exaggerating her predictions on our lifespan. And me? Well, personally, I just stay frozen for one moment. The smell became bearable given just a few feet of distance, but Dr. Catherine's rabidly furious pace is more difficult to recover from. Besides, I have company. The hand that had supported my back earlier belongs to a man. Another doctor from Operation Blackland, in fact. He has the same lab coat and lanyard as Dr. Catherine, but his eyes hold none of her vaguely threatening charm. He looks as somber and curious as I feel. He stares at me thoughtfully for a moment, and then, very clearly, but quiet enough to convey that this mustn't be discussed with anybody else, he tells me,
"You're doing a good job. Keep questioning everything. Don't trust anything or anyone."
He doesn't seem interested in a reply from me. He gently nudges my back, and all I can do is walk forward, hurry to catch up with everyone else, right on time to be introduced to our living quarters for the next few hours, or the next few weeks. It's tough to say how long it'll be when everyone refuses to answer our questions anyway. The next few days at the headquarters of Operation Blackland are a time for me to learn a lot of things. First, and this is fantastic news for someone that has lived off scraps, trash, and stolen bits since childhood, this place has food. Plenty of it, in fact. Warm, fresh, and more than enough for workers and patients alike. Second, Dr. Catherine is much more important than I guessed when I first met her at the gates of a dying city we already left behind. She seems to be everywhere, a part of everything, and in charge of too much. I don't know if it's a lack of personnel, if there are just half a dozen women trained to look and act just like her, or if I'm starting to be paranoid and scared of her. Either way, I feel someone watching me at all times. When we sleep in those big, cold rooms with a dozen bunk beds that half of us can't even climb to reach the top. When we are carefully led like prisoners to the canteen, and we all smile for our good fortune and cry for the hungry people we left behind. In the bathroom, on every hallway, absolutely everywhere. And it takes me a while to realize that. Sometimes, it might not even be Dr. Catherine, but the other suspicious doctor that warned me not to trust anyone. Well, he did a pretty good job with that order. I'm beginning to mistrust my own sanity. I've heard that my sickness starts to affect the brain at some point, and this paranoia could be part of it. But I also know that, even with my fingertips turning to dirt, I'm still just in the early stages of the sickness. The same can't be said for many people around me. Starting on the first night, it becomes quite obvious that we're surrounded by imminent death. The Blackland building has at least 4 large rooms for patients with a dozen bunk beds in each. Presently, we're only using 2 of them. No separation between different illnesses or between men and women. You take the bed you like and hope for the best. It's difficult to sleep at night when 1/3 of your roommates have lungs so devastatingly contaminated that I swear I've seen dust and grey smoke come out of their mouths when they cough. Back home, I know even children stopped joking about their parents looking like dragons when they coughed. They all have watched someone die like that. It's a terrifying sight, and an unmistakable sign of a quickly approaching demise. Still, on that first night, exhausted after a lifetime of running and satiated by the best dinner I've probably had in my life, I fell asleep. Under the cacophony of coughs, discreet crying, and never-ending construction work at the very bottom of the building, I simply drift out of consciousness. I have no way to measure how much sleep I managed to get. All I know is that at some undefined moment of the night, the noise increases aggressively around me, and it brings me quickly out of my slumber and prepares me for the worst. I always wake up ready to flee or fight. I'm used to waking up in a rush, jumping out of bed, assessing a situation and deciding the best course of action for me and my family on the spot. I have a lifetime of training for this. And yet I'm so severely disoriented by my extremely unfamiliar surroundings that it takes me a couple of seconds to put the pieces together. The tragedy is happening in my room, not the one on the other side of the wall. There's a commotion close to me, not by the door and not at the end of the room either. It's not exactly an emergency because people aren't running away or fighting. With that one reassuring realization, I slowly get out of bed and finish evaluating the situation. There's a small crowd gathered round one of the bunk beds a few feet away from me, and I make my way there cautiously. Some people prefer to continue sleeping, or at least pretend they are sleeping. The rest are waking up and coming closer and closer like zombies, attracted by others' pain. A room full of sick people is never quiet, but we could all hear that someone's agony was louder than the rest. Someone was giving his final fight. It was a man older than me. His sickness resided in his lungs. I had seen him before, struggling to breathe and coughing during the entire trip. But we were all hoping to last long enough for the Blackland people to find a cure. It looked like not all of us were going to make it. The old man was in his bed, his deathbed, squirming like an animal. A couple of people tried to hold his hand, offer extra blankets, and even try to hold him down so he wouldn't hurt himself even more. But it was all wasted effort. We all know, as well as he does, that there's nothing we can do to save him. Anywhere else in the world, we might have turned our backs to give him privacy or offer a comforting hand as he drew his last breaths. But we aren't just anywhere. We are in the headquarters of Operation Blackland, the one place in the world where we were promised help, healing, and a cure. With this thought in mind, I turned toward the door of my room just to find out that not only I'm not the first one that had this idea, but it is already failing. I jog toward the door until I start catching bits and pieces of the conversation going on between a few fellow patients and a pair of guards. Something about keeping calm, help being on its way, nothing else they can do until... Oh, that unmistakable voice.
What seems to be the problem?
Dr. Catherine asks. By this time, I reach the door and I stand with 6 patients, begging for help for one of us that's not going to make it to the next hour. But when Catherine hears this...
And what do you expect us to do?
She asks us. Her calm voice and questioning face are utterly baffling to the rest of us. "Help him," I stutter, and my voice is barely a whisper. I even lower my head before her eyes find me, afraid of once again crossing a line.
Oh.
The doctor gasps, as if the possibility of helping one of her patients has never even crossed her mind.
Oh. I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. Operation Blackland isn't finished yet. We aren't ready for the final launch. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do for him at the moment.
Are you serious? I ask her incredulously. I regret getting her attention again, but I feel just so tired of her bullshit answers. Surely there's some kind of infirmary in this gigantic building. You're a doctor, for fuck's sake. There has to be something you can give him to ease his pain at the very least. Dr. Catherine blinks slowly and eyes me as if she could pull me apart and disintegrate with one look.
There is an infirmary,
she admits.
There's also a few hundred selfless, brave, and healthy employees working tirelessly under this roof. You wouldn't want them to get infected, would you? You wouldn't want your friend to be responsible for the delay or, God forbid, the indefinite interruption of Operation Blackland, causing all our efforts and all your hopes to be in vain, would you? You aren't as contagious as the people from outside would make you believe, but we aren't taking unnecessary risks. I'm sure you all understand.
Some of the people around me start to move away from the man, and some, like me, try to make one last feeble protest. I utter my last argument. So you're just going to let him die like this, without any help or mercy, like an animal? Dr. Catherine takes one step backward, setting herself firmly back in the hallway and out of our room.
Technically speaking, we are all animals, are we not?
She says.
And as such, we need water, food, and rest to keep going. We offer 2 of those things. We can't force you to sleep, but we highly recommend it. Go back to bed, ladies and gentlemen.
With one delicate nod of her head, the guards close and lock the door of the room, decisively separating both of our worlds. The disillusioned silence that follows her heartless statements is deafening, and it's enough to let us hear her last words.
We will dispose of the body in the morning.
When I return to the bed of our unlucky companion, he's already dead. Fortunately for everyone involved, on the second day, we have something to do other than sit down to wait for the next one to die. It's not a lot, and it's quite tedious, but it's something. Nobody comes to wake us up, but most of us have lived our entire lives on the defensive, never really safe or calm, so we're used to waking up at the first sounds of activity, or the first ray of sun that comes in through the windows. The windows happen to be lightly tinted in most parts of the building, as it is well known that overexposure to sunlight is deadlier than ever. Looking around me, I see people with burn marks on their arms and faces, and I wonder if I'm supposed to be more grateful and hopeful than I really feel. To be fair, I've never been so safe and taken care of. In a matter of days, my supposedly incurable illness could be gone, and I could go back to my family. It's certainly a nice thought to have in the early morning. It's something that I know will get me through the day, if only I can fool myself into trying to believe it for a little longer. When the canteen was announced open, some guards come to pick us up and guide us downstairs to that large hall where we devour our first meal of the day. There are small bathrooms upstairs that we were allowed to use since we arrived here, but after our breakfast, we're led to much bigger bathrooms, which I guess are the same used by the workers of the place, and finally separated between men and women. I can't speak for everyone, but I know that a warm shower, brief as it was, is one of the best experiences of my life. And when we're done, we're given fresh, new clothes. Cargo pants and a white t-shirt that says Operation Blackland on the front and guest with an individual number on the back. With our new uniforms, our little group looks less desperate. Our hopes are invigorated, and we dutifully follow all instructions. Next, we're taken to what I can only guess is a conference room. There are chairs available for over 100 people and a small stage at the front. It feels special, something prepared just for us, not meant to fit more than the strictly necessary for this moment. If I try, I can imagine dozens of scientists, doctors, and all kinds of professionals gathered right here for God knows how long, working day and night to find a cure for the diseases that are mercilessly cutting down our population. Did they seriously succeed? That's what they want us to believe, but I can't stop doubting it all. It seems way too good to be true. I know I won't believe it until I'm personally cured. We have to wait for some time. Some people can't stop coughing. Someone keeps scratching at his charred skin until there's almost an inch of black powder on the floor between his feet. One of the people, constantly dehydrated by their drying insides, faints, and she has to be taken out of the room. But finally, Dr. Catherine arrives, accompanied by a pair of guards and a handful of other doctors, including the secretive one that talked to me once, and lasts less than 5 seconds before spotting me in the crowd.
Good morning.
Dr. Catherine addresses the crowd with her characteristic, impeccable smile.
I welcome you again in the name of Operation Blackland to the official first day of work. I am very glad to see everyone looking much better this morning.
Well, that's a generous statement. Some might say it's a lie. It gets a couple of scoffs from the crowd, and I barely restrain myself from joining. It's obvious she's not going to mention that a man died last night.
We are very proud to have you here with us. It is our honor to be working for you. I know all of you must have many questions. Trust me, they will all be answered in due time.
That, once again, sounded like those saccharine lies that Catherine generated like a machine.
You must understand that this is a very ambitious project, a monumentally large enterprise. And for our plans to work out, we can't stop working, we can't slow down, and we can't get distracted on the smallest details and inconsequential technicalities. The only way for this to work is if we all comply with the mission together, calmly and resolutely. And we all definitely want this to work out, don't we?
God damn it, she is good. In a few sentences, she has most of the patients nodding along, clapping or even cheering if their sore bodies allow them to. My smile is wavering, though. The energy and hopefulness of the beginning of the day can't help but dim at the first sight of Dr. Catherine. Something about her just makes me put all of my defenses back up. There's also the fact that there's a pair of eyes boring into the side of my head. It's that other doctor. His attention makes me feel so uneasy. Why did he fixate on me? What did I even do? Was my brief disobedience and impulsiveness that alarming? And what does he want with me? Is he trying to catch me on another misstep so he can throw me out? Is it all a trap? But he sounded so deadly serious when he told me to question everything around me. Reliving that man's words in my head isn't going to help me, especially when the next step in the meeting involves signing a stack of papers without questioning a word. After Dr. Catherine speaks for a few more minutes about patience, trust, and good behavior, she asks us to form an orderly line in the middle of the room. One by one, we're going up to her to sign a contract with Operation Blackland that's legally necessary to move forward into our healing process. But here's the thing. She doesn't read the contract out loud for us. The first few on the line greet the doctor, exchange a few words, sign the papers, and go back to their seats in a matter of seconds. As expected, one of them has questions. She's too far ahead of me to hear exactly what she asked or what Catherine answered, but it doesn't take a genius to guess it wasn't a thorough, solid, or even honest answer. I can feel my heart start to race in anticipation. I could let it go. I don't have to make a scene. I can just act like most of them and just sign the damn paper that is promising me a healthy future. Can I take a look at a contract? I ask, as kindly and unassuming as I possibly can when I reach the front of the line. Dr. Catherine doesn't wince and doesn't even sigh. It's like she expected this.
Of course you can. What kind of agreement would it be if we didn't allow you to read the papers you're going to sign?
She tells me with the calm voice of someone who practiced her speech. And yet, when I put my hand on the contract at the top of the pile, she does the same, more firmly, keeping the pages in place.
You do understand that if you stop the line to read these few pages, you'll be causing a detrimental delay in the entire operation, right?
I can move to the side. I can read from my seat, I suggest, while I prepare myself for a fierce back and forth.
Then everyone will want to stop the whole process for some reading time.
Don't they deserve to know every word of what they're agreeing to?
Half of them don't know how to read.
Read one contract out loud for them.
Every illness, person, and contract are completely unique. We'd be here for hours.
Isn't it worth it?
You tell me.
She slams her open palm on the desk in front of her. I feel slightly proud to make this gleefully robotic woman lose her patience, but the next time she looks me in the eyes, I can repress an intimidated shiver.
You can read it later, after you've signed, while you're receiving the treatment that will save your life.
She tells me, whispering this time, and I know the next words are just for me to hear.
Or you can read it on your way home.
When I lower my head like a very sick sheep and sign a stack of papers that could include full control of my soul for all I know, I recognize one very important detail. Just like the first day when I realized that Catherine never asked for my name, I now realize that underneath my signature on the final page, there isn't a name printed out at all. I'm just guest 198. I'm just a number. I'm so focused on the impersonal and inhumane feeling of it all that I don't even notice the doctor in front of me making a gesture with her hand. I'm frozen in place. It takes the feeling of a pair of hands on my shoulder for me to figure out that Catherine isn't even letting me go back to my seat with the others. I'm being escorted out of the room. This steals a defeated sigh out of me. But it's only about to get more interesting.
That was good,
Says a voice at my back. I know immediately that, for better or for worse, I'm suddenly stuck with the one doctor that had a little too much interest in me. It's a testament to his stature, or the lack of crew available, that they let a doctor instead of a guard take me away. I don't think Dr. Catherine would agree, I retort.
Yeah. Well, I don't think she's a doctor, so...
Upon hearing that completely unexpected remark, I yank my shoulder from under his hold, and he lets me go, easily. Unfortunately, I'm so stunned by this inexplicable behavior that I just stand there frowning while he goes on, talking quietly and quickly.
I know I'm a doctor, but most of the others don't inspire a whole lot of trust in me. I think they just blindly hand out that title to everyone here, for the sake of uniformity. Have you ever wondered why they call you guests instead of patients?
At least he has the decency of looking over his shoulder repeatedly to make sure we really are completely alone. He's supposed to escort me back to the rooms. Here, at the half-turn of the stairs, we're sufficiently hidden from plain sight and he has a good view of our surroundings. I'm sorry, I whisper, and because this man is either insane, dangerous, or the only honest person in this entire operation, I just blurt out my sincere thoughts. What the hell is going on here? What are you talking about? And why are you talking to me, of all people? He thinks about it for a brief second. But he must know we don't have much time, and I suspect he knew exactly what he was going to say, long before the opportunity finally presented itself.
My name is Preston Cruz. About a year ago, my mother disappeared, but not without leaving me a note saying that Operation Blackland was going to cure her sickness. She looked a little worse than you the last time I saw her, but when I went searching, it was goddamn impossible to get into the operation unless you were sick. It took me this long to infiltrate it by getting a job in it. I know they work with a group of guests every few weeks or months. It's the first time I'm going to see them in action and figure out exactly what they do. But I'll tell you this, I don't trust them, and you looked like you didn't trust them either. I think we ought to work together.
I can't keep myself from scoffing. This is a lot to take in. It doesn't make much sense, and I'm tempted to wholeheartedly believe he is just crazy. I can't deny that he has a point. I don't trust them as blindly as most of the other patients. Guests, victims. No, I can't think like that. This man is going to get me kicked out of my last opportunity to save my life. This is ridiculous. Work together doing what? All I want to do is get this over with and go back to my family, I insist. But he doesn't back down.
That's what my mum would have said.
He says, and by the tremble in his voice, I know that he's more serious about this than I expected at first.
I refused to believe she was healed and then just didn't want to go home. A lot of things could have gone wrong, and I think something bad deliberately happened here. Look, you don't have to believe me. You don't have to do anything that puts you at risk. Just stay alert. I'll find you again.
I sigh deeply, but I have nothing to add to this conversation. I let him put one of his hands on my shoulder again and lead me back toward the patient's rooms. There aren't any more incidents, and he lets me go without a word. Once inside, I locate the bed I claimed the previous night, and I lie down to think for a while. In fact, for the rest of the day. That's nearly the only thing I do. In the afternoon, the doctors begin the medical examination of the patients, but it takes a long time to get through everyone, and there's a priority on the ones that are doing worse than I am. There are at least 24 of us, and I suspect I was right to believe they don't have enough personnel, and even if there are many of them, maybe Preston was right, and most of them aren't actual doctors. Either way, they take half of the patients out of the room, and in the relative quiet that follows their absence, I have time and peace to meditate about everything I know so far. I know the different diseases are real, and they've been plaguing people all over the world for years and only getting worse. I know that Operation Blackland is relatively new, mostly a secret, and expects blind faith from everyone. But I also know that they promised us a cure. They've given us food, clothes, safety, and hope. Assuming I believe Preston Cruz is telling the truth, I know his mother was sick, taken to Operation Blackland, and never returned. But I know someone has already died during this round of the operation. A lot of things could have gone wrong that don't necessarily mean there's something nefarious going on here. On the other hand, there are the things I don't know. I don't know how we all got here. I don't know why everything has to be a secret. I don't know what exactly is the miraculous cure that they promised. And, I suppose, I don't for certain know if literally a single soul around me is telling the truth. The whole thing gives me a violent headache. I don't completely trust Dr. Catherine Roy or the people of Operation Blackland, but I have to. I need to trust them. I need their promises to be real. They are my last hope. If this goes wrong, I could be dead in a matter of days. I end up falling into a restless sleep until dinner time. The warm meal, at least, is enough to lighten my mood and ease my stress. It is on this second night that the shock of this entire adventure finally eases in me. I feel the dust start to settle. I finally believe this isn't a dream. It's a delicate situation, and I could easily lose this privilege, but also, it's real. I'm here. I have a place in this miraculous building, and I can let down my guard a little. I know that I'm not the only one that has been too nervous to think of anyone but myself. But when I look around, I see groups of people already deep in conversation, and I think they must have drifted close over the last 48 hours or so. Before I can drown in a wave of solitude and self-pity, I shake my nerves away and prepare to improvise to survive, like I always have. I march to the group closest to me and almost seamlessly join their conversation. There are two women that look so frail and thin that I know at once they're some of the people with contaminated guts that are eating them from the inside out, and the man standing with them can barely move his right arm. which looks like a tree root freshly pulled from the soil. I know we share the same condition. I know that we are both turning into dirt, unless the operation hurries up. We've barely discussed how much we enjoyed dinner when I can no longer ignore the feeling of being observed. As discreetly as I can, I shift in place until I can get a good look at the front door of the room. I perfectly recognize those eyes by now. It's the enigmatic doctor that keeps talking to me. It's Preston Cruz, and he's looking directly at me through the small window at the center of the door. I should probably ignore him. I have to stay out of trouble. I have to keep my head down. But I can't forget his words, and I need to know more. I don't even have to be overly discreet when I make my way to the doors. It's common for the patients to talk to the guards or doctors for many reasons, try to ask for favors, meds, a phone, more food, water, or simply permission to go out to the bathroom. I don't know how Preston keeps pulling out these luckily convenient moments of privacy, but when he lets me out of the room and to the side to avoid the windows, we are completely alone.
Well?
Preston asks me. What? I scoff.
You came over willingly. You have something to say or something to ask. Go on. We don't have much time. The guards are on their break.
Of course they are. Now, I could play dumb. I could act as if there's nothing special I want to discuss. But there's something that hasn't left my mind since this afternoon. A man died last night, I say gravely. The woman that fainted in the morning died as well. 2 people never returned from the medical examination. I highly doubt all of us will make it through the night. I'm not sure what to do with any of this. I don't know what to believe. Up until that point, I think I wasn't planning on being that honest or sounding that earnest. But now the words are out in the open. For the first time, it looks like I said something Preston didn't expect. He looks thoughtful, genuinely processing the words, but eventually I think he had his answer planned regardless of whatever I would have told him.
We don't have to do anything drastic. We can continue to observe everything and everyone. Keep questioning everything you see and everything you hear.
Preston says. He pauses to take a look around us and glance at his watch. Then he adds,
Talk to people. Figure out how they found out about the operation. Look for inconsistencies in the stories, incongruencies, or coincidences that don't feel right to you.
I feel a spark of excitement at the prospect of doing something useful and risky with my time here. But then I sigh and wonder, what are we going to do with that information? Preston looks me right in the eyes and takes a step back. He has to leave, and quickly. But first he tells me,
if we can be completely sure they're lying about something, about anything at all, then we'll have every right to fight back against them.
Just like that, Preston opens the door again and pushes me inside. He's gone, and I'm left frozen in place, trying to make sense of the unwanted mystery developing all around me. I can hear the boots of the guards approaching the door, so I make my way back toward the groups of people chatting amongst themselves. I walk slowly and take my time looking at them. They're all more or less like me. Maybe some of them are from the city and lived a safer and more privileged life than me. Maybe some of them never even had a family, were picked up from the streets, and this is the best thing that ever happened to them. Either way, we are all sick. We were all given a death sentence by the agonizing world we live in. Our water poisoned our digestive systems, the air tore up our lungs, and the very ground we stand on infiltrated our skin. Maybe Operation Blackland is our only hope in life, but if there's something wrong with it, if they have lied to us, then we all deserve to know, right? Someone has to do something about it. Right. The next morning, after breakfast, it's the turn of the other half of the patients to go into the medical examination. This includes me, and this time I'm not surprised to see Preston Cruz already there. For the examinations, They bring us to another large room, a middle ground between the orderly conference room and the mess of the canteen. My suspicion about the lack of staff is confirmed when I see that there are only 3 doctors actively working with us, though Preston was wrong about something. Catherine is a doctor, or at the very least she's working as one. I'm not sure if she actively avoided me, if Preston manipulated the line so I would go with him, or if it was just pure happenstance. But after waiting for a long time for the first patients to go in, it's finally my turn. The room was divided into 3 sections with hospital curtains, and when I enter mine, I see that there's a cluttered desk, an examination table, 2 large storage cabinets, and a handful of medical equipment that I'm completely unfamiliar with.
Welcome, guest 198.
Preston tells me, a little louder than necessary, and he drastically lowers his voice when he tells me.
Sit on the table, answer each question, and tell me just 1 sentence of something you've discovered since our last talk.
I nod my head. I understand. There are ears everywhere, and we have to be discreet. I follow his instructions, and despite my racing heart, I prepare for the riskiest conversation we've probably had thus far.
Full name?
Ben Manning. Everyone found out about the operation through different means.
Age?
30. They were informed by police officers about to arrest them, nurses turning them away from hospitals, criminals or complete strangers on the street.
History with previous illness?
Nothing serious. People were promised different things, like an elite hospital, special pills, a secret diet, something in a military base, or assisted suicide.
When did your symptoms start?
Less than a week ago. That's all the information I have. Now it's your turn to give me something. There's a much-needed pause in our conversation. Dr. Preston looks calmer than I feel, but the tension in his shoulders is evident. He takes a discreet look around us, even if the hospital curtains cover our surroundings, and then he nods, calmly. As he prepares to take my blood pressure, Preston leans in closer and whispers.
Blackland isn't a last name or the name of some drug. It's a place. We're all going to the Blacklands tomorrow. It's the final stage of the project.
After that, no matter how much I insist, Preston doesn't tell me anything else. We go through the medical examination without any more trouble. He checks my blood pressure, lungs, reflexes, weight, and height. He takes samples of my blood, saliva, and the dark brown powder that falls at the lightest touch from my infected hands. Then, he puts me in some sort of X-ray machine where I have to just stand still while a series of bright lights travel over my body for several minutes. In all my life, I had never been in a hospital, not even a regular doctor's office. Everything I know about this process comes from old books and the occasional movies we watched as quietly as possible on the small TV of the basement where we live and hide from the world. I have no way to know if all or any of these actions and instruments are at all common around the world. Technological advances, or outdated and obsolete. I'm not sure I want to know. Lastly, I have to wait for a while as the doctor studies the results and prepares a series of concoctions, pills, and some clear liquids in tiny cups. I don't feel confident about any of those meds. I don't trust any of it completely. But I also know I don't have an option. Until Preston gives me one.
All of those were regular medication. I've seen them before. Some were to ease your pain, some were just vitamins, but this...
He pauses and I watch him stare thoughtfully at some cloudy liquid in another of those small plastic cups for medication.
I have no idea what this is. They just told us to give them to all of you, no questions allowed. It could save your life. I could make everything worse. I have no way to know for sure. But I think it's fair that I leave it up to you.
I feel as if time has stopped all around them. Preston holds the cup between us, but I can't move to take it or push it away. Up until now, all my decisions have been taken for me, or they've had low stakes. For the first time, I know that what I decide right now might make a difference in my chances of living or dying. Every day I trust this entire operation even less. And I'm tempted to ask Preston to just help me escape, forget about the truth, and just help me go back home so I can die in my sister's arms like I was maybe supposed to do. But I don't do that. I know that this isn't the end. I know that there's one more day, and I'm going to hold on to this last chance I have for as long as I can. Without letting myself hesitate another moment, I take the medication from Preston's hand and swallow all of it in one go. It tastes bitter on my tongue. It briefly gives me nausea. My examination is finally done, and I have to leave and obediently follow our routine for the rest of the day. When the medical examinations are over, we're all taken to the canteen for lunch. I don't feel particularly great, but I know that some of the people that had had their examination the previous day are looking a little better, healthier, stronger. But I also know that whatever meds they gave us aren't enough for the ones that are already more dead than alive. Somebody falls asleep halfway through the meal. Someone else is struggling so much to breathe that every exhalation comes with a small cloud of smoke. Somebody cuts herself with a knife, and her body is so dried up that she doesn't even bleed out. Our bodies are weak, unrecognizable, and damaged in ways that we could have never imagined. The spirits of the group are fairly mixed when it is announced that we will spend the afternoon receiving instructions for the final phase of the operation. The worst part is that this is taking place at the very bottom of the building. We have to descend so many stairs that 2 people need to be carried after their legs give out, and 2 more need to share an oxygen tank. We leave a pitiful trail of dirty blood and agony behind us. I knew from Preston that this was going to be our last day in the headquarters, but even so, I'm genuinely impressed they finally let us into the giant hall where most of the workers of the operation have been building something day and night since we arrived. The place is a huge mess, but I'm under the impression it's the kind of mess you leave behind when you finish a very demanding project. There are workers everywhere, cleaning up things and moving odd metallic parts, big cables, and pieces of machinery. I don't know where they've taken most of the things that they had been working on, but I know there's one secluded area just for us. Preston is nowhere to be seen, which sparks a little bit of worry in me. Catherine is here, though. She's standing on top of a metal crate, ready for another grand speech of lies or something like it. But hardly anyone is focused on her. The real attraction is next to the doctor. We are staring at a large, white, metallic sphere. It looks like a 7-foot-tall golf ball. There are black patches on certain spots on its surface. There are dozens of cables pooling around it and sneaking inside like snakes. On the side facing us, there's an open circular door. Inside, we can see, among an incomprehensible series of buttons, keys, levers, and wires, there's a seat. It doesn't take a lot of imagination to guess what Dr. Catherine is about to explain.
Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce you to the Blackland capsules.
Dr. Catherine speaks, and the entire room hangs on to her every word.
These vessels of granite, metal, and other composite materials are an exclusive and comprehensively safe structure where you will enter as you are now, and you will come out completely cured and new.
There is a small pause for people to share awed murmurs, and for Catherine to move closer to the mystifying machine at her side.
Tomorrow we will take you and 20 of these capsules to a very unique place in our world called the Blacklands. For years, we have studied the extraordinary properties of this limited stretch of land, and we have come to the satisfying conclusion that we can harness these attributes of the land to cure every single one of the diseases that are attacking all of you. Are you ready to give yourself to the Blacklands?
The crowd erupts in cheers. and I feel a painful pressure in my chest. Why did this make sense? Why couldn't I trust them? Could it be that I have seriously lost my mind in my effort to try and understand everything around me? Without further ado, Dr. Catherine and a few assistants guide us one by one inside the sample capsule to teach us all about it. They explain the full system in a way that's more honest and thorough than anything else they have said since we arrived. They tell us about the suits we have to wear, the tubes and wires that will be connected to us. They walk us through every latch, every button and every sign that we have to know about the proper operation of the capsule. The demonstration is so detailed and specific that I start to worry it's just a distraction. But even when my fellow patients start yawning and asking about dinner, I stay focused. I try to memorize every word. I try to catch them in another potential lie. It's useless. Either they are too good at this, or they're telling the truth. I can't even find Preston in the crowd to exchange one knowing look, so I can remember why I didn't trust these people in the first place. There's no Preston. No further incident, and nothing remarkable at all that happens for the rest of the evening and into the night. We've run out of time. We're moving forward with Operation Blackland. On the day of the final phase of the operation, it feels as if Dr. Catherine and her subordinates found out about every single doubt any of us ever had about them, and they're making sure to take that reluctance off our minds. As if the professional and exhaustive explanation of the Blackland capsules wasn't enough, this time we leave the building in perfect order and calm. It's worlds away from the secretive and chaotic retreat we made out of the city at the start of this whole thing. They give us a lavish breakfast. The workers are all smiles as they lead us to the trucks, and they are overflowing with patience and kindness. It's unnerving. And yet I think it works. I think almost nobody notices that there are less than 20 patients still alive. Barely. We drove away from the headquarters in the early morning. For a long time, it's all the same old desert we're familiar with. Poisonous earth, contaminated air, deadly sun rays. There's nothing and no one around us. It feels like we're the last people on Earth. Then, miraculously, after a few turns on the road, for the first time we catch sight of some green spot on the horizon. No one could blame us for thinking it was a mirage. But, after a few more minutes, when everyone is seeing the same thing and when we keep getting closer and closer, it becomes undeniable. We are approaching a place bursting with life. The contaminated water and air and the unforgiving heat had turned the planet into something nearly inhabitable years ago, and most of the plant life had perished. There are some resilient trees, new species of cacti, and the fascinating little garden kept under a crystal box in front of the Blackland headquarters. But it was nothing compared to this. This is better than the movies, more magical than books. Suddenly, we are surrounded by dozens of different kinds of trees, tall grass growing on both sides of the road and stretching as far as we can see. Flowers, vines, fruits, the most beautiful and luscious vegetation one could possibly imagine. And then, as soon as it appeared around us, making us tear up, it disappears. At the center of this shocking discovery of plant life in the middle of nowhere, there is the strangest terrain I had ever seen. It isn't a desert, and it isn't quite alive either. We are staring at some sort of swamp, a stretch of land that's black, muddy, devoid of plants or color, just dirty puddles, soggy ground, and 20 models of the Blackland capsules scattered all around. The guards and doctors guide each of us to our respective capsules. They double-check the system, connect the tubes and wires to our suits, and with one last smile, they close the door. The doctor assigned to me is a stranger. I don't see Preston, and Catherine is busy, and this feels like the end of something huge. I'm all alone in this metallic sphere with the number 198 painted outside, surrounded by blinking lights and gear that I don't fully understand. I can hear movement beyond the locked door as all the other capsules are closed, and the doctors return to the trucks. I can hear movement beyond the locked door as all the other capsules are closed and the doctors return to the trucks. I can even hear the rumble of the engines in the distance. But then it falls completely silent. Operation Blackland has started, and there's nothing else I can do now. Except I barely hear the splash of footsteps hitting the puddles of the Blacklands when the door of my capsule gets aggressively thrown open. It's Dr. Preston Cruz.
"This is the last time you will see me alive,"
he says. His face is bruised and covered in blood. He's breathing heavily and his clothes are torn and dirty. He drops a piece of paper and a key on my lap, and then, in the blink of an eye, the door closes again, and my only ally is gone forever. I recognize the key immediately. I know I could open the door of the capsules, but I'm more interested in the letter that Preston left me. It says,
"Ben Manning, you are more than a guest, a patient, or a simple number. None of you signed up to be a martyr. I can't save you, but I can give you a choice. You aren't here to absorb a cure from the Blacklands. You were brought here to be absorbed by this strange and uncanny swamp in exchange for the expansion of the vegetation around it. Catherine and her team are tricking and sacrificing people to help recover the plant life on Earth. Slow process, but it seems to be working. I just thought you should know. If you choose to leave, unplug your suit immediately and wait as long as you can before leaving, so it's safer. Good luck, Ben."
I barely finish reading before my trembling hands are yanking every tube, every wire, every cable that connects my suit and my body to this killer vessel. That letter has filled me with too many emotions to keep track of. My fury and sense of betrayal make my hands shake. Hopelessness lodges in my throat, making it hard to breathe. But I push through, inspired by the gratitude I feel for just one person. I'm tempted to just go out right away, but it would be a shame to escape this death trap just to get shot by a guard from one of the trucks nearby. So I make the inhuman effort of keeping calm and waiting in this cruel, powerful, terrible prison until the right moment to leave. Now, I don't know if Preston managed to warn other people, if there were others working undercover to find the truth, or if desperation and pain are enough to make people find an exit from their tombs. But I start hearing screaming from beyond my capsule. Fuck. I can't believe it took me this long to figure it out. This isn't just about me. The other people are still connected to these deadly machines. What the hell has happened to them? I finally spring into action. I open the door of my capsule and I'm welcomed into a world of utter disaster. The soles of my boots sink in the mud of the Blacklands. The sun has started going down, darkening our surroundings, and the trees surrounding the marsh cast ominous shadows all over. A cold breeze makes me shiver. But maybe it's the sound of the piercing screams that can be heard coming from almost every capsule. I'm not the only one that managed to escape, though. To my right, I can see a woman crawling out a barely open door, and several feet to my left, there's a man tearing the capsule apart with his bare hands. He doesn't flinch at the fire, the sparks, or the sharp pieces of metal that cut through his dried-up skin. I can hear people screaming, crying, and fighting with everything they have in their already weak bodies to break free of their prisons. I rush to help the woman closest to me. It looks like she broke the lock of the door from the inside and pushed it until there was an opening big enough for her to crawl through. When she gets on her feet and we stare at each other, we both gasp. I'm shocked because she ripped her suit, and I could see that the skin of her hands and forearms, which used to be the colour and texture of ashes and dirt like me, had turned light brown and green. But there's something else to know. Those green patches aren't her skin. They are small leaves that started sprouting from her skin. I'm still staring when I realise that she's staring at me just as shocked. More accurately, she's frowning at the key in my hand.
You have a key! How do you have a key? What's going on?
She yells at me, and I think she would have killed me with all the violence she would have used on Dr. Catherine and the others if she could, if I didn't react on time. It doesn't matter. I don't know about this. Help me free the others. I plead with her. And she doesn't look overjoyed or look like she trusts me. But she goes along with me, and we move to the next capsule. I use the key and she helps me push the heavy door aside. This time we scream in unison. Inside, we are welcomed by an image that nothing could ever erase from our memories. A woman is inside, one from the group with bodies drying from the inside out. She's still firmly on her seat. She can't move at all, because there's what looks like a tree branch bursting from her mouth. It's as if it came directly from her stomach and had grown and crawled through her throat in a matter of minutes. The worst part, she's still alive. She breathes and blinks and looks at us with an expression of the most profound terror possible. I stumble backward and nearly stumble against the woman that helped me. She's kneeling on the ground, throwing up whatever meds they gave us to facilitate this process. As we continue opening up the doors, the results are more and more concerning. In some cases, we arrive just in time to make a difference and possibly save a life. We pick a guy who stops throwing up buckets of mud as soon as we unplug him from the capsule. We help a man that broke both his hands trying to break through the door of his. But sometimes we're too late. We find a skeleton in one capsule. There's barely a trace of flesh and blood and hair still sticking to it. We find a capsule with about a foot of mud at the bottom, and we have no way to find out what happened or what was truly left of the woman that should have been inside. And at some point, we are forced to admit that we can't save everyone. All we can do is offer a choice. The woman that was skeptical of me at first has to do her best to physically drag me away from a capsule where there's a man with his skin falling off and a smile on his face. I can't just leave him, I protest, yelling louder than I have in a long time.
You can't force him to leave.
She barks back at me.
That doesn't make you better than the fucking doctors, okay? This guy's already dead.
Her voice breaks on that last sentence, and we get curious looks from the few people we've managed to help out of the capsules on time. Her words get me to calm down, and I know all of us are listening intently to her words, even though she speaks much more quietly now.
We're all dying. Those assholes manipulated us, but just because we escape from this doesn't mean we're going to survive. Look, it's a noble cause, I guess. If people want to die for the sake of some much-needed trees, let them. God knows we need them. What matters is that they know the truth. He can stay. We can leave.
We get to choose wherever we die, I say. It's the heaviest set of words I have uttered in my life. I think that up until this moment, I have preserved some kind of hope that, despite the lies, despite the secrets, somehow I would make it out of this whole thing cured and healthy. No such luck, I suppose. At the very end of it, there's less than 10 of us trying to make our way out of the Blacklands. Most people are already dead. Too weak to try and leave, or simply compelled by the idea of sacrificing for some kind of greater good. I suppose it's some kind of positive thing to know there's a way to bring life back to our moribund planet. And I imagine that the secrets behind Operation Blackland can't last forever. The truth will come out to the rest of the world sooner rather than later. Many thousands of people will travel the world for a chance to give their life to the Blacklands that will resurrect our home. Maybe there will be civil war, and the army will fill this swamp with prisoners and innocents, sacrificing them by force. I don't know. I won't be here to see it. My only concern now is to find a way to return home. See my sister and dad one last time and die in peace. Safe, and surrounded by the people that loved me my entire life, despite the horrible circumstances we had to endure. So, with most of our suits covered by mud, and our bodies in a worse state than ever before, the few survivors of the latest batch of the Operation Blackland get out of the swamp and even manage to successfully cross the short stretch of wild vegetation around it. We've been following the same road we came in on. We never expected to find a truck waiting for us at the end. For a moment we think we've been caught, we're doomed, but that isn't the case. On the driver's seat of the abandoned truck, there's Dr. Preston Cruz. There's a bullet wound right in the center of his forehead. I can't imagine the arduous battle he must have fought for justice and for the truth. But there he is, even after death, giving us one last mercy. A way to go back home. Hey, sci-fi horror fans. It's Thomas. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Craving for another scary story? Click on that video on your screen. Until next time, everyone. And remember, stay cosmic.